I took so long to review this album because I wanted to do the best album review I could for it. I wanted to get to know this album, and unfortunately, well, as many times as I've listened to this album, it just hasn't happened the way I wanted it to. So I'm just going to review it now before the time between its release and my review becomes even more ridiculous. So if you're watching this, you're already probably familiar with Anthrax. You already knew who they are. They're a thrash metal band, came out in the 80s. They are a classic. They are one of the big four. And here in 2016, they released their album, For All Kings. And the one thing I can say about this album, of course I'm going to say many other things, is it's consistent. There aren't a whole lot of peaks and valleys in this album. If I were to rate each of these songs, the worst song on this album would be rated a 6 out of 10. And I think you would find that most of these songs would be in the 6 to 7 out of 10 range. 6 being a good filler track, but not something that really brings you back to the album. 7 being a pretty good song, and so forth and so on. And I think that's part of the problem I have with this album. Like, I'm very happy with the consistency. I'm very happy that there's not one song on here that I find to be a bad song, or one song that I can say, yeah, skip that track. That's horrible. No, they're all solid tracks, but there aren't a whole lot of standout tracks either, and I think that hurts this album a little bit. Also, the production is a little too modern sounding for my taste. At times, it sounds a little too loud, if that makes any sense. I am a bit drunk right now, so please forgive me if I'm not doing my best review, but again, I wanted to wait so that I could do the best review I could, and unfortunately, I'm sick of having this on my to-do list, so we're just doing this now. My other issue with this album is, well, I have two more issues. The pacing of this album. Most of these songs are slow to mid-tempo, and I just feel like the pacing of this album is stuck in mud. I feel like it never, or very rarely ever gets going, and I find that very frustrating. I mean, this is supposed to be a thrash metal band, and they have so many songs that are just either the same or very similar tempos, and that does get very frustrating. The track order seems a bit off. The song For All Kings sounds like it would have made an awesome opening track, but at the same time, the opening track, You've Got to Believe, which I'll get more in depth into in a moment, either needs to be the opening track or the closing track, and I think they did fine putting that as the opening track. So what I would like to have had is that song as track number 2, following it, and moving forward from there. Also, the last track, Zero Tolerance, is one of the few faster paced songs on here. I would like to have had that song mixed into the album a little bit more to kind of break up the monotony. Also, it seems like the fast moments in this album all have the same pacing. It would have been nice if they had varied that up a little bit, but for some reason they went kind of with one standard pacing when they wanted to go fast, and I find that a bit unfortunate. The highlights for me are For All Kings, which, like I said, is a faster paced song. I think it's a pretty solid track. It's got nice verses, nice chorus. Nothing really special to say about it. It's a pretty standard, fast paced thrashing song, but it's generally pretty cool. I also really like Breathing Lightning, which the main verse riff and even the verses have this kind of feel of Madhouse to me. It feels like musically, it feels like something that come out of the '80s. And while I think the chorus is pretty good, I wish the music had been faster during the chorus. I don't think the chorus really fit the verses as well as it could have. I really wanted a catchy Madhouse type chorus. But overall, I think the verses and chorus are generally pretty solid. This ends up still being one of my favorite songs on the album as well. I also really like the intro, and I believe they do it again at the very end of the album, or the very end of the song. Kind of clean guitar riff. I don't think it was acoustic. I can't remember if it was acoustic or clean electric. I just listened to this album today. That's another issue I have, is it's not very memorable. Like, I remember these songs when I hear them, but once I'm done listening to them, very few of these do I actually remember. But For All Kings, Breathing Lightning, awesome tracks. Evil Twin is also a pretty solid track. And I also really like Blood Eagle Wings. I think I'm reading that properly. Again, I'm visually impaired, but if I'm reading that properly, I think that's the name of it. Still, this is a pretty solid album. Now, this track I saved for last. I saved for last for a reason, and that would be the opening track, You've Gotta Believe. This, so far, has been my favorite song of 2016, and this is a song, I feel like stuff like this is what music has been missing for quite some time. This song has a fairly cool intro, which starts off with some violins, and you hear like what sounds like a sound effect of some people yelling in the background. You got some guitars, which sounds like they're being played backwards, or the recording was played backwards, and just it's kind of a weird, trippy little intro, but it's kind of cool at the same time, and it doesn't overstay its welcome at all. And there are a lot of changes even in that intro before busting into this ferocious, fast-paced, I guess you could say, actual opening riff of the song. And I do find it a little disappointing because the verses of the song aren't really fast-paced. They go back into that slower tempo or mid-tempo pace that most of the album has, but even then, it's still got a nice riff to it, a nice pacing, and the vocals are cool. And the rest of the song is just so awesome that it's easily overlooked. The chorus is amazing, and it gets faster during that. And what's really cool about this song too is beyond the intro, beyond the verse chorus style, they also do a break in the song where they do this kind of slow section where you got this quiet drumming in the background, a lot of bass, some guitar lead fills, some like guitar licks going on in there. You got Joey singing quieter, and it just provides a nice bridge to the song before going into the solo and back into the chorus. And when I say I feel like music has been missing this for a while, I mean a song that can break from the verse, chorus, verse and do something a little different in that same song and still make it work and feel like the same song. And a lot of music just doesn't really have that. Either they go verse, chorus, solo, chorus, and end of song, or they don't do the structure at all and it just ends up being a mess. This song is amazing. I love this song. I'm sure nothing that I'm saying is really doing the song justice, but that's okay. Easily, so far, it's been my favorite song of 2016. And that's really the only true standout track I can really think of. Like I said, Breathing Lightning and For All Kings are pretty solid tracks. And even Evil Twin to an extent. But for the most part, most of these songs I find to be passable, pretty good filler tracks, but not a whole lot of really good songs on here. I'm going to give this album a solid 7 out of 10. I think it is a pretty solid album, but I think they could have stepped it up a little bit more and made it a little better than it was. Like I said, the pacing, I feel like there should have been a lot more variety in the pacing. I'm not a big fan of all mid tempo songs, and most of these are. But it is still a very solid track. If you're an Anthrax fan, you've probably already heard this album, but if you haven't, I mean, it is worth your time to listen to. It is a solid album. Like I said, it is very consistent and definitely worth your time.